I did not like where our food scene was going. And it's actually part of why I was focusing a lot more on My Milligram, is that I was finding a lot more creativity and optimism in the cannabis space and opportunity versus the food scene, which was becoming very precious, very expensive, very elitist. And also the Instagramification of our food world was just grossing me out.
That was Marcia Gagliardi of Tablehopper and My Milligram. I'm Jeff, and this is Storied San Francisco. In this podcast, Marcia picks up where she left off in part 1, with her return from Italy, first to LA, and then back to the Bay Area. She tells us about various jobs she had before the dot-com recession in 2000. It wasn't long after that Marcia had the idea to start a newsletter highlighting the bars and restaurants she loved. And that's how Tablehopper was born in 2006. Fast forward to 2018 and the launch of My Milligram, Marcia's media brand that features reviews of low-dose and high-quality cannabis products made in California. She ends the podcast with her outlook on the future of San Francisco, specifically her thoughts on changes we're already seeing in the food and drink industry. Here's Marcia.
I was really happy in LA. I was having a great time. And I think, just there was a lot of opportunity in Los Angeles there was part of me that was wondering about Hollywood and screenwriting and, pursuing that path or publications, publishing. Mm-hmm. And then I was working, when I graduated, I was working like 3 jobs. It was really funny. I was I was working at a high-end furnishing showroom. I also was working, this was so interesting. It was, I was conducting interviews for a sex study.
Okay.
So that was wild. Yeah. And they were like 2.5 hour intakes of like talking to women about all their sexual experiences of their life.
Was this for a study for your?
It was a study for UCLA. Yeah, okay. Yeah. And then I was, I was doing all kinds of crazy things like hair modeling. My hair just kept getting progressively shorter and shorter and shorter. So yeah, I was like doing all these hustles, and then the Northridge quake happened.
In '94.
Good memory.
January.
Yep. January 17th at like 3:15 in the morning, and I heard it before it struck.
Oh.
It was so loud.
Okay.
And I knew immediately what it was, and I'm like, oh shit, and just started running out of my bed, and it knocked me down, and felt the whole house shift, and like I remember seeing the transformers blowing out outside my window, old lady screaming downstairs, like it was horrible. Everything in the kitchen, all the kitchen cabinets, everything just opened up, like it was a nightmare.
Were you worried, like your whatever house or building you're in?
I thought I was gonna die.
Yeah.
I did.
We've got a lot of folks who shared stories of '89, but this might be our first '94.
Yeah, I was here for '89 too. That was scary. It was really scary. I just remember it was I was selling men's fragrances at Emporium in San Mateo. Yes. And I remember I was in the bathroom putting on my lipstick to go back to work. And again, I heard the sound. I'm like a dog. I'm all, what is that? That's not it. That's not normal. And I started running out of the bathroom, and it was like this whole food court thing. And I'm such a brat, but my thought as I was under the table was, I was like, and there were people screaming. There was like a TV falling off, and I was like, I don't want to die with these people. That was my thought. I was so mad. I was like, I'm not going out like this. Yeah. And then the Northridge quake, like hearing the old lady downstairs screaming, and like I remember I was screaming, I'm not ready. Mm-hmm. And then it finally stopped. But yeah, my apartment was red tagged. Had to evacuate it. And my roommates had just taken off to Australia, and one of them was a musician, and I had to track them down. Like, do you even know what's happened? And so, yeah, I had to like hire these big guys to come take their stuff out in the middle of the night and get it into storage.
Because the earthquake was in the middle of the night, right?
Yeah. And they red tagged it like 2 days later. There were cracks I could see through in the walls. It was awful. It was angry. The force of it Yeah. It was pretty scarring. I had total PTSD for a while.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, my parents said, "Are you coming home?"
After that?
Yeah, and I was like, and at the time I was like, I don't want to make this decision out of panic.
Fear.
Yeah.
Right.
And I was like, let me think about this. And so I had a friend who was letting me crash at her place. And then I was like, I should go home. Like,
yeah, the earthquakes up there are nicer.
Oh, yeah. Very friendly.
They're
They're gentle.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was like I had no money. The idea of even having to like pay for a new security deposit on a place, and it was complicated. So yeah, I came home.
So was it 94 that you came back?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was it mostly like I'm going back to home, like even if I don't know if you lived with your parents, but it's like
that was rough.
And I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Go home and figure
yeah.
it out.
Yeah. There was like a recession light happening then in 94. Like it was hard to find work, actually. There weren't a bunch of jobs. So yeah, I just started looking and looking and looking and looking, and found a job at Wadsworth Higher Education Textbook Publishing on the phones, doing customer service for professors, with helping them with their instructors' manuals and the books they'll need. And so that has changed my relationship with any time I ever need to call anybody. From Xfinity to whatever, like, that is a hard-ass job.
Yes, be nice to these people. It's not their fault.
Be nice.
I mean, they can be shitty, like anyone can be shitty. But 99 times out of 100.
Yeah.
It's like...
Yeah. If you have someone shitty, I'm just like, call back and talk to someone else.
Right, yeah.
I just call back till I get the answer I want. But yeah, so that was, but yeah, living at home. I mean, thank you to my parents for letting me come back home, but oh my God, I was like, I need to get the F out of here. Like, I need to get back to my life. So, started looking for an apartment in San Francisco.
Okay. Still 94 or?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And then, it was funny because, let's see, so in 94, the trick that I learned was I would get the Sunday paper on Saturday and go through the classifieds and start calling for appointments. And so that way I would be like one of the first to see places. And so, but I really wanted to live in Lower Nob Hill, Tender Knob. I've always loved that neighborhood. I thought it had so much history. It was so cool. But every place I looked at was a dump, just a dump. And I'm like, I can't. And I kept looking. And then when I found this place, where I've been living for the past 26 years on Broderick, I never moved.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it was crazy too, because when I pulled up, I remember I was like, "Oh my God, like is this the building?" And it's like it's this gorgeous Queen Anne. And I walked up, and then I was going up the stairs and kept going up, and I'm like, "Oh my God, it's the top floor." And I walked in, and then it was this little studio, and the landlady was there, and there was a guy that was ahead of me. And he wanted the place, but he didn't have his checkbook, so she couldn't do the security check and the whole thing. And I looked at her and I said, "I have a checkbook. I also have cash." I was like, "Whatever you want." She's like, "Sorry, young man, I'm going to give the place to the young lady."
Wow, just right in front of him.
Right there, I know. Sorry.
Hey, he learned.
Yeah.
I hope. Or he doesn't live here anymore as of 26 years.
Yeah, he's just like, that bitch.
So you've been in your place 26 years, so you pay like $60 in rent.
I pay a little more than that, but it is.
That is amazing.
It's an amazing thing. I know I'm one of the rare folks.
Yeah.
Like when people come over, they're like, "Oh my God, this is so dense. It's like so San Francisco."
Right.
Yeah, it's like Bohemian headquarters, basically.
Nice.
My pied a terre.
Can we lightning round from getting the apartment on Broderick to like all the in between?
So let's see. So yeah, I was in the higher education textbook publisher for a while, commuting down to San Mateo or Belmont. And then I was dating this guy who I met up here, and he's like, you're doing a job that's... Eventually I moved out of the phones and I made it into the marketing department. I was a traffic manager and working with all of the promotions. And he's like, your job exists in ad agencies in the city. He's like, I know someone who has your exact job. He's like, and I know someone who's hiring. I was like, fantastic. So I met Teresa Cheney and ended up working at Goldberg Moser O'Neill, which was this very successful ad agency on Maiden Lane. It was a dream job. to be like 24
Right.
and working with all of these creative people, brilliant people, big personalities. And I would have to run up and down these 6 floors,
Wow.
getting sign-offs on ads. And eventually then I moved to a smaller boutique agency, hilariously named Blazing Paradigm.
Oh my God.
I know. I was like, you guys. And that's where I made the transition to being a copywriter.
Okay.
They quickly realized I was a frustrated creative. And then I got laid off in 2000 because dotbomb was a nightmare then. But that became, so I had a creative partner, Hillary, and we were collectively known as Marcillery, because we'd go out dancing a lot. We always wore bright lipstick, curly hair, loud, just Marcillery. So we went off on our own and formed our own creative partnership, and we were doing work for like electronic arts and some like gaming, and then Volvo and things like that.
Still doing copywriting.
Yep, copywriting and like creative idea generation and marketing, and then back then it was guerrilla marketing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so we would come up with some pretty crazy, marketing campaigns. We did some really cool shit that it was fun. I found some old portfolio pieces recently. Yes. I was like, oh, that was a good idea. That was good. And it was an exciting time, but also really hard work. And eventually she moved to LA, and I was like, okay, well, what do I really want to do? It's like, and I always spent all my money on food. I was always, if I could go eat in a restaurant, that's what I would go do. That or like vintage clothes. So that was, and really big into cocktails. And I realized people weren't really experiencing the city and writing about it the way I was. And I was like, why isn't there a newsletter about just like the cool things going on with all these awesome bars opening and, anything from like taco trucks to, some more fun places that you could go drink at and carry on. And it was when there was this newsletter called Daily Candy that was out. So it was kind of when like the whole like newsletter thing was really taking off. And I knew I didn't want to do a blog because from my advertising background, I knew that I would get a higher advertising premium through actually getting into people's inboxes. So that's how I structured it. Okay. And it's funny to go back and look at my business plan. I was like, wow, like it kind of held true in the content, then the different sections of Tablehopper. It's been an amazing experience to be able to write about my city for 15 years, and that I could never lose the job because I have
your boss.
Yeah, that's it. I'm boss of me. So
where'd you come up with the name?
It's funny. I came up with it. I was really sick, and I remember that afternoon. I was like, okay, you can take a nap, but I was like, you need to brainstorm about your business name. You need to think about it. And so I was like, what am I? I'm kind of like a girl Friday. I'm like a girl about town. I'm a tablehopper. And I was like, shit. I remember getting out of bed, going to register.com and typing it in. I'm like, oh my God.
It's available.
Tablehopper. It's like, yes.
That intersection of you like the name and it's available.
It was a lightning rod moment. And
nice.
Yeah. So that's how that happened.
And then can you recall at that time or around that time, what were like 3 of your favorite either bars or restaurants?
Okay. I loved, well, I'd have to look back officially and see, but
sure.
When Bizou became Coco 500 in Soma, like Scott Baird was doing cocktails there, and I just remember how much fun it was to go into that little bar and see what he was working on, and I loved that whole scene.
That neighborhood was a lot different.
Oh yeah, it was funky.
Everyone, it was busy.
Yeah,
people. Anyway. Yeah,
and there was you'd have little parties that would go on down there. It was a funky vibe.
Okay.
I loved going to the Orbit Room when.
You know what? I swear to God, that was one of the places that, as you were talking about cocktail bars.
It came into your mind?
Yeah. And I was wondering if you...
Oh, Alberta Straub was like... She was such a progenitor of our entire cocktail renaissance here. And I don't think she ever really, like, got her due in the right way. But, yeah, hanging out at the Orbit Room was, like, one of my favorite hangouts. I loved it.
That's where I learned what a caipirinha is.
Oh, nice! And then with the ginger that she would put in it too. The muddled ginger in there. Totally, yeah.
Anyway, one more.
Slow Club. Oh, Slow Club was so sexy. Like, and it was that whole, it's kind of San Francisco industrial modern look, like kind of like Universal Cafe, 42 Degrees back then as well. Let me think. Foreign Cinema. Like, all of these places had that chic look. Yeah. But we're pushing, California cuisine. And Slow Club, I used to love hanging out there. Getting a drink in the back, and like it just was always the right vibe. Let's hear, how did My Milligram? And if there's a backstory, go for it. So My Milligram, I, as a Northern Californian, grew up with cannabis, smoked it, enjoyed it, listened to a lot of Led Zeppelin, Grateful Dead shows, the whole thing. But then eventually, like, weed got too strong for me, and I stopped enjoying it. I started getting paranoid. And then fast forward to a friend who was asking me to help her on some cannabis project that she was going to be working on and launching. And she wanted me to do a lot of research for her. And she introduced me to CBD because she was taking it for pain. She'd had a really terrible car accident years before, and so it had really changed the quality of her life. So she educated me about CBD, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. And then I started going to all these different dispensaries to look at what products were out there, and noticed how high milligram everything was like, 100 milligram cookies. And I was like, oh my God, that's going to kill me. I will die. And I would ask people, I'm like, what is your bunkest weed? Like, what has the least amount of THC? And they're like, why? Yeah, what does no one else want? Like, who is this chick? And I'd just be like, I was like, what is the lowest dose cookie? Like, so it was me always being looked at in this way, like I was nuts and like just a weirdo. And I was like, no, I'm just super sensitive to THC. But my friend, he has this cannabis olive oil that he makes called Potawheel. And it's a brilliant product because 1 milliliter is 1 milligram. So I was able to experiment with this product at home and dial in my exact optimal dosage where I was like really happy and figure out the timing and the onset. And after a while, I'm like, wait a minute, this is what people need to understand about cannabis. Like, the more I learned about its many benefits for wellness and well-being and giggles, and insight, all of it, I had a different relationship with the plant by being able to control my consumption. Okay, your dosage. Yes, exactly. And like, things not being just the cookie or the brownie or the joint that you're being passed, but actually controlling with a beverage or a tincture. And so it just launched me onto this journey of sharing this information with friends, getting really excited about the innovation of these products. The science is incredible. I mean, even the way that they're emulsifying products and how do you get cannabis into a beverage and when it's fat soluble, like it's incredible. The technology is incredible. So so My Milligram was launched 3 years ago as a way to really educate people about the top products and applying a lot of my knowledge around food to how I assess cannabis. How is it sourced? How is it grown? How is it being made? So if it's just some shitty chocolate someone's using to make, a chocolate bar, like I'm not going to be enthusiastic about that. Right. Just because it happens to have weed in it. Right. I'm not impressed. So it's been incredible to watch how the industry has really been working more on the culinary side. I mean, now we have Dominique Crenn and Enrique Olvera of Puyol in Mexico City working on gummies.
Nice.
That's wild. So for me, like, also really coming out for people to help destigmatize it. It's like, guess what? I'm a highly functioning stoner. Like,
right.
It helps me get my work done. And people are always like, how do you get everything done? And like, you work like a beast. I'm like, yeah, but cannabis helps counteract that. Like, I'm here to completely destroy the lazy stoner stereotype.
Nice.
It's a lazy stereotype. And yeah, so My Milligram, I've done events, I have a newsletter, but also I really have a lot of fun curating the content for my Instagram feed, because it's like very neon. It's how cannabis feels in my body. It's full of color, and I like to just share the positivity that cannabis brings to me and to others. And I've been so happy to see how we can take care of our elders with it. That to me is the most beautiful part of my work. When my dad refers a friend to me to like help him with, his arthritis, or, his wife's having trouble sleeping, and to be able to guide people to the right products. So I'm kind of like a cannabis matchmaker in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it.
So, I mean, I don't know where that's all going to go. I started a big venture a year ago that then didn't work. It was a subscription box for people, but my delivery partner went kaput. So that was very unceremonial.
Oh, you made the mistake of bringing other people into it.
Yeah. But sadly, so yeah, I'm trying to figure out my path forward. It'll be great now that we can have events again and gather. Yes. So
fingers crossed, rabbit's feet rubbed.
Yes.
We're heading the right
totally.
Before we get to the kind of the thing that I want to wrap up with, how do people find both Tablehopper and My Milligram?
So tablehopper.com is where you can sign up for my bi-weekly newsletter, and mymilligram.com is a sporadic newsletter. My content used to be more regular, but it'll be appearing in your inbox in some form soon. I'm also on Instagram at Tablehopper and at My Milligram, and I'm pretty active. Somewhat active on Twitter at Tablehopper, sometimes at My Milligram. It's a lot to keep these channels going.
You have to tell me.
Yeah, And then I have a YouTube channel as well for My Milligram. And it's just youtube.com/MyMilligram for some educational videos about some of my favorite products.
She didn't say it, but please subscribe.
Thank you. You can meet Mrs. Doper.
Okay. She comes out in a muumuu and smoking a joint.
Oh yeah, I've got full caftan. It's Mrs. Doper is here to talk to you about some things.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
What we've been doing this season, our theme is We're Still Here. Through especially the last year.
Yeah.
Everything that's happening. But I think, again, with the intersection of your experience, not only living here, but writing about food and drink, can we hear your thoughts on where we are and where we're going in the near term? How do you feel about it? I know the work you're doing, contributing, but do you feel optimistic, pessimistic, something in between?
I mean, as someone who's been documenting the implosion of so many businesses the past year through no fault of their own.
And it was happening right before the pandemic.
Yes.
Remember?
Yeah, it was already so hard
Yes.
to run any kind of food business in San Francisco. To then, just really watching people's dreams and businesses that I've written about before they were, when they were still a business plan, or they didn't even have their location yet.
Wow.
To then with their opening and now suddenly writing their obit.
Yeah.
I know. I said to a friend, I'm like, I feel like I've become an obituary writer this year. It's been hard.
Right.
But I will totally say this. I did not like where our food scene was going. And it's actually part of why I was focusing a lot more on My Milligram, is that I was finding a lot more creativity and optimism in the cannabis space and opportunity versus the food scene, which was becoming very precious, very expensive, very elitist. And also the Instagramification of our food world was just grossing me out. I'm like, are you even eating it? Do you even like it? Do you even know the story behind this? Like, the fetishization of food for the sake of like the lighting or the neon sign, like this is soulless.
Right.
So what's happening is, with all of these side hustle businesses and all of these spaces suddenly becoming open again and rents coming down, what I'm finding is, we're seeing this bubbling up that happened in the previous recession of people working together on shared spaces and like, the whole pop-up model to really follow their dream and their passion about what they like to make and trying to find a space and an audience for it. And now that we do have these tools like Instagram and TikTok, you can really spread the word on what you're doing quickly, and you don't necessarily have to have a lot of capital to do it if you've got a lot of hustle in you. So I think what's going to happen is, we're seeing a lot of movement with rents and things, but for so many of these long-term businesses that are just really an integral part of our fabric, they have been ripped apart and bankrupted. And, I'm hearing horrible figures of businesses being over $100,000 in debt that they're coming into this
just
reopening.
Since the recession.
Yes.
Or
Yes.
recession and the
yes.
pandemic. Yeah.
So, it's kind of this double-edged sword where I am mourning the stress and the exhaustion and the loss. I'm also welcoming the creativity, the optimism, the sheer resilience of people in our food industry blow my mind. The way that and like, you could really see during the pandemic who was showing up and feeding the community, taking care of each other. And then the other big shuffle is, a lot of people, we're talking about this labor shortage right now. Well, guess what? People don't want to work in the restaurant industry anymore. Like, there's no money, and it's so much has been revealed about just so many levels of deep injustice and racism and sexism and not being appreciated, and it's brutal. So the optimistic side of my vision is, seeing some restaurants who are trying to find different formats of creating a non-tipping policy or a, service included, really making sure the back of house is compensated fairly. Yes. So that's like something so in my podcast On the Fly, that's why I want to come back for the second season is to start documenting what's happening with businesses coming back and how are they going to try to do things differently. And we, as the dining public, need to be supportive of these changes they're trying to make. And, look at the La Cocina Municipal Marketplace. And yes, like, one of the most exciting things to have happen. And in the hardest corner, like the open air drug market in the Tenderloin.
Right.
Now they are creating this headquarters for these it's a brick and mortar for these immigrant dreams to open and serve food and to be paid fairly for it. And guess what? Good food costs money, unfortunately. But there are ways that people can be fed there for their, they have their daily, it's like $5 meal that different plates they offer. So, I think we're going to see a big reshuffling of priorities. And if people are going to just try to do things like we did in the past, you're not paying attention. You're going to become a dinosaur. So, I'm happy to see, just some of that change happening and eliminating just the white maleness of the restaurant industry. Like, not interested. I'm like, we have so many other voices and faces that need to be put front and center. And this is happening within food media. So I'm really happy to see consciousness raising and awareness raising and being supportive of everyone's journey too. A lot of people have not had the breaks that others get, and being aware of our privilege. And even me as a white woman, like, I've had a lot of just looking at self and my own coverage and I think I have always been a voice of equity here in the city, but there are things that I was like, oh, you might have been able to include this person and pay more attention to that. And so,
Is that another thing you think the last roughly year has helped you?
Yes.
To do? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And certainly, yeah. I mean, for me, like with my On the Fly podcast, I was like, oh, well, I'm in charge here. So who am I going to talk to? Women. I want to talk to women. I want to talk to women that people don't hear from. Like some voices, some people are like, oh, I don't know who that is. And I'm like, okay, well, listen to her story and listen to what she's doing. And I think a lot of women also who just don't take the microphone and don't promote themselves, but they have so much magnificence that they offer that I wanted to amplify those stories. And certainly with the Black Lives Matter movement, that was a very powerful time to be documenting stories. Still is.
That was Marcia Gagliardi. On the next episode of Storied San Francisco, you'll get to know comedian and DJ Larry Dorsey Jr. Look for episode 8 next week. Music for the podcast was produced, performed, and curated by Otis McDonald. Original photography is by Michelle Kilfeather. Aaron Lim of Bitch Talk Podcast is our contributing producer. And the show is produced and hosted by me, Jeff Hunt. Now in our 4th season, we have more than 150 episodes available on our website, storiedsf.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you can, subscribe, rate, and review our show so we can reach even more folks. And if you'd like to drop us an old-fashioned email, we'd love that. The address is storiedsf@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, stay strong, stay healthy, and we'll see you next time.
This podcast is a proud member of the BFF.FM podcast network. Learn more at podcasts.bff.fm.
BFF.FM, best frequencies forever.